co-host, Q, and we have the other co-host, Dimmer Switch Disco. Say hello.
Hello.
We're here with our guest, Kayla, journalist, and we're going to be talking about Daydream Crashes. We all get them every once in a while, some more than others. I know I do, but we'll be talking about that today. Today, we have a couple questions to start out with.
You get out of a daydream after a couple hours and you're just exhausted. But sometimes I would also get days where I feel like I should be daydreaming, but I'm not. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it feels like you're in a daydream, but you're not.
Mm-hmm. And would you say it's like kind of like brain fog, or you're just like the world feels rather dreamy, like you're watching it through like a film, or you're watching it through like a filter or something like that?
Yeah, I would say it's like watching everything through a television screen.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. Okay, I get that a lot. Or at least I did. Not so much. Not so much these days. But it really feels like um derealization, like low key derealization, and
Yes.
it's temporary. It goes away, or at least for me, because I don't have a dissociative disorder. But But yeah, I've always described it as the world looks like a painting. I think that's kind of the best way I can describe it.
Mm-hmm. A little bit washed out.
Yeah, it feels like I'm in a not even washed out. Not for me anyway. It's more really vivid for me.
Pastel colors and nice fancy things.
Yeah, the greens look greener, the light looks brighter,
Uh,
it looks like a lovely painting.
Oh,
And I feel disconnected from it. It's like I shouldn't be here.
mm-hmm. I remember. I think I had one, maybe two distinct instances where when I daydream crashed, I felt really jittery for some reason. Like I was not. I was. Do not mistake. Do not mistake me. I was not energetic. I had zero energy, but I felt like I was just kind of like vibrating, not vibrating. It was very strange. It was like I had been like jacked up on something for a little bit, but I was like my brain was still going, or like something was going on. Like I don't know. It was a sense of like restlessness for a little bit before it took like an hour to go away when I got out of my daydream. But I was like, I can't like. I'm not like feeling any more energetic, but like inside, I was just like. It felt like I had taken. I think what are they called? I had taken medication to give me energy, but it never does. I don't know what it felt. It was very strange, but that only happened twice. It's not the usual for me.
I find okay, yeah, there's a physical aspect to a crash, which I don't know. I guess we still haven't really defined. It's the negative feelings associated with like post daydreaming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a physical aspect to it, but the ones that hurt me the most is the emotional crashes.
Mm-hmm. You get super attached to whatever was happening, and then it all goes wrong, or you were just super. Once you get out of the daydream, like all of it sort of disappears, and you realize, oh, ow, I'm not there anymore, not anywhere.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's also very nebulous in the way that I'm describing it, but it's like how, let me put it.
Yeah.
Let me make it a little more concrete. So you're in a daydream, and you have this phenomenal scene going on, this phenomenal scenario, and you are just you're there with your characters, or you're watching them real close, and there's like let's say there's a like a marriage or like a very happy moment, like a celebration going on, and suddenly you're taken out of your daydream for one reason or another, and like it doesn't even need to be somebody pulling you out, like you are just sort of taken out of your daydream, and you're no longer there at that celebration, and you're wherever you are, and you're like, wow, that was it's like you have a very distinct moment where you're like, wow, that was fantastic, but I'm not there, I'm not at that celebration, I was a daydream. Well, I mean, I guess you knew it all along, but now being on the other side, being sort of here in real life, not experiencing your celebratory daydream so closely, you have this intense sense of longing intense sense of loneliness. You know, that
Yeah.
that's how I would describe it. That's how it was for me. That's only one of the ways you can crash pretty bad. That was how the worst crashes for me emotionally were, right?
Yeah, the worst crashes for me are emotional too. Somebody actually asked in the Discord, like, what is a daydream crash? And I don't know what kind of mood I was in, but I was like, it's that moment when you look around and suddenly realize you have nothing, you've built nothing, and everything you care about is a laughable phantasm. And they were like, holy shit, Dimmer, calm down.
Hmm. I
But that's
mean,
what it feels like.
yeah, like Kayla, do you like? Can you sympathize with that, or like?
Yeah, like emotional. The way you're describing it, it kind of reminds me of where I'm so into the daydream that when it just stops, I'm like, oh, that wasn't actually happening. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like I knew it wasn't actually happening, but it's kind of
Hmm.
like emotionally I was invested in it that it felt
Hmm.
like it was real.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I think I'll put it this way, right? I was thinking about it the other day. Is there's a difference between like saying something is happening and then like actually experiencing it. I mean, we all know that. It's like, okay, I could skydive, says someone, and then they go skydiving and holy cow, you're terrified beyond belief, right? And like seeing it like a movie, seeing it on screen and being there are two entirely different things, you know. We all know that.
Mhm.
But there's not a lot of opportunities to find yourselves in both positions. But like as a maladaptive daydreamer, at those times where you do find yourself originally being there, and you know, in the movie, in the show with the characters, and then suddenly finding yourself on the other side of the television screen, it's rough. It's like the disconnect is huge, and it hurts.
That just reminded me of something. Okay, have you guys ever heard of that oh shoot, I don't know what it's called, but it's like Paris syndrome or something like that?
I've not heard of Paris syndrome, no.
Okay, it's Paris is such a romanticized famous city that sometimes when tourists go to Paris and don't have that kind of experience that they were expecting, when they see Paris, it's actually not that romantic and whatever. They get um, actual like depression symptoms, like physical, emotional symptoms that are strong.
Hmm. It's like, but that it's the same thing, right? It's the disconnect, right? Once the
Yeah,
disconnect,
yeah.
it's the disconnect from here to there, right?
It
You know.
sounds like it kind of sounds like a daydream crash almost.
Hmm. I don't know, but I mean, hey, like in reality though, they really were daydreaming about Paris, right? Well, I guess
Yeah,
not
I would assume.
literally, but like figuratively, it's the same thing. You romanticize something so hard, and it's like meeting your idol, and your idol is not anything. I mean, you see that motifs sometimes in movies or comics or whatever. You meet your idol, and then suddenly your idol is not what you thought they were, and that disconnect is so large, you are just so disappointed or upset, or you know. It varies per character and varies per person, but it's the same sort of deal, right? But in terms of instead of meeting your idol, it's kind of like going the opposite direction. In most cases, it's like you're like how do I put this? It's like seeing them on the television screen first, as opposed to seeing them in person first, if that makes sense, right? Kind of reversed.
Yeah.
Does
So
that make sense? I might be insane.
no, I get you, and it's just I don't know. Okay. I have a question for you guys. So like on a scale of 1 to 10, I guess how mild or severe would you place your crashes?
I would say obviously it depends on the type of crash, but overall probably around a 6 or a 7. Like, 'cause they can just be so exhausting. Not even just physically, but emotionally too. They're draining, and if they don't happen towards the end of the day, it's like your entire day's almost I don't wanna say ruined, but it's what it feels like.
Hmm. Takes a lot to get yourself back on your rails once it's so early in the day.
Yeah, like, I remember I had one, I think it was, like, at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I was about to start like an exam for a class, and I was just thinking, how am I supposed to do this? Because now I'm falling asleep.
Hmm.
'Cause sometimes that happens to me after my crashes. They just make me so tired that I start dozing off.
I used to get them really bad. 1 to 10 scales are really hard for me to quantify.
Yeah, I know these aren't gonna be super accurate or
No,
anything. Just,
no, you're
trying to give, like, guess a few.
no, I got you. I got you. Well, here, then I'll put it like this. It's like I'm trying to find a number that would suit it because an easy answer for me would be like an 8 or a 9, but the older I got, the lower the number went, right? So these days, my daydream crashes are very minor, but that's because I have so much happening all of the time, always. I usually do that's not a word, brief stints of daydreams. Um, like I would do maybe like an hour, um, like an hour, a brief stint of being an hour. Yeah. Which just shows you how much daydreams can take up your time. But I would do it for maybe like 40 minutes to an hour, and then if I crash hard, then it's not exactly as bad. Maybe it'll be a 3 or a 4, but it's still not like a 9. They used to cripple me really, really hard. When I was younger, because when I was younger, I had nothing, and like a lot, you could probably argue that I still don't have anything, but the older I get, I've sort of been building like a life beyond my daydreams. Now, how do you quantify that? I don't know. But the more I have out here, like not in my daydreams, the less the crash is because I can say, oh, um, like leaving that like daydream world. Obviously, it's not as glamorous. You know, it's not the Paris I thought it was. Life is not the Paris that I believe. It's not as glamorous. I'm not at the portside town with the in like a fantasy realm with their like absolutely, as I said before, like a celebration. Like I'm not there at the parade. The fireworks aren't going off, right? But it's not like I'm just waking up with nothing. Now my room is very empty because I'm moving, but I might be waking up to a room that's a little bit more empty. But I have people who care for me, so I can wake up. I can, well, I guess, crash less because I end up crashing into the people in the real world.
I think I am in a similar boat as you. When I was younger, I would have rated them really pretty high, especially when my maladaptive daydreaming was like at its height, um, in my late teens, all the way through my mid 20s and stuff. But as I've gotten older, I would rate them pretty low now. Like, I mean, they still happen. I still come out of it and I look around and I'm like,
Where did it all go?
that's yeah, yeah, and not even like where did it all go? I mean that, but like also like I can't, because I don't daydream about myself, so it's not like I'm not living the life that I imagine. It's
Hmm.
not like that. But like my characters, they just have much more deep and intimate relationships with each other and with their world and their histories and stuff than I think is possible in real life. Or like I'm never going to be as good of friends with anybody as like these characters are with each other. Like that just doesn't
Hmm.
exist for me. And it's something you want to exist for you. Like you want to have a deep and meaningful, a profound relationship, but it's just not going to happen. And it's never going to happen, and that hurts. But as I've got older, like I mean, I have my baby and I have my husband. So even though like I might look around and be like, oh my God, it's not like that. Like I still
Hmm.
have things that soften that blow.
Hmm. Yeah, it was at some point I just had so many crashes over time, like the world around me didn't literally become crazy, but I became more numb to them because I was like, this is just what's gonna happen. Like if I get too into it, this is the price I gotta pay, right? Life is a series of decisions and concessions, and if I decide to go really hard into daydreaming, I gotta concede that when I come out of it, it's gonna hurt a little bit. And a little bit was relative, over the course of my life when I was younger. That little bit hurt a little more than that, just that. But, at the end of the day, I at some point made the I made the connection. I made the decision to, say to myself, I said to myself, this is just gonna, it's gonna sting a little bit. So, when you rip the Band-Aid off, there's always gonna be that sting, but the Band-Aid's got to come off. The but I wanted to mention, I have a question for you both. When you can you do you okay? Do you remember or can you think of a situation in your daydreams that hurts the most when you leave it, right? Like I guess I could start as an example would be those sort of portside town celebrations, right? Where there's been a massive development in the story, or there's been because I have my daydreams tend to run. They have the slow burn. They run long, with long campaigns of X, Y, and Z happening, and whenever something major comes by, or like there's a massive battle, or like there's a major victory or something like that, there's a huge celebration. And I do think of those like Paris type cities, those sort of seaside cities, or those like in the like forests or wherever. And then there's like the town celebration, the citywide celebration. And then when I leave those, that hurts the most, because I do want to be there during those celebrations, you know, and not seeing it quite from that perspective, being not there and all, it hurts. So,
I'd say it's the big emotional scenes. Characters in my daydream, like they or daydreams, my characters love to have these really sad situations for whatever reason. And leaving those, I find hurt the most because it's like, well, I want to see what happens. I want to see what comes next almost. Like I want to finish this part and get to the next sequence before I leave it, because it's kind of like pausing a movie in the middle of the big climax, where like you pause in the best part of the movie and you have to go do something else and you can't get back to it.
because the moment's not there. The moment's not there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's not there, and it's almost like a pit in your stomach, I want to say. Maybe a little less extreme than that, but it's close to it.
Well, you expend your emotional energy connecting with these characters, and in the middle of it, right? You're in the center, and you just have such a huge connection, and you're sharing so much emotional energy as it's going on, and having it severed almost means like you've given them like your emotional energy, and it's not coming back. So when you get out of it, you're just spent, because you were just there as this character might have gotten killed, or this like their relationship has been ruined, or there's some one of your characters might never come back, and you were just in the center there. You've been cut out. So you come out of it and you say, what do you do, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At least during those moments, that's what it felt like for me.
Yeah, those I get those big emotional, but it for me the crash part of those, like that aftermath of those, it wasn't so much like I need to get back to it. I want to see what happens. It was more like I'll never have that.
Mm-hmm.
Um and but the ones that kind of get to me now are actually see if I could describe this. The ones where they're planning things, the characters are planning something, and it doesn't seem to matter what it is, if they're planning a big battle or if they're planning their dinner. Doesn't matter. what what's been happening is I'll pick up on it. I'll pick up on the energy that they have, like physically in my real body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're going here and there. Their mind is going a mile a minute. Maybe they're a little stressed, whatever. They're trying to get things done. And then I jump out of my chair like I need to get this done. What was I doing? Where did I put it? Oh, that's right. I wasn't doing anything. I was just sitting here.
Mm-hmm.
I have nothing to do. I have no plans. I've been staring at a wall. There's nothing I need to do. And I'm just looking around, kind of confused for a minute. And I'm like, I guess I'll just sit down again.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where once you've come out of there, it's because you have your heart racing, right? And then suddenly you jump out of your chair, and then your energy, you've lowered your energy because you're like, oh, this energy almost wasn't entirely mine. It was somebody else's that I've picked up on, and now that I don't have it anymore, if you tried to go back, I suppose you could, but it wouldn't be quite the same, right? It seems very draining. And it's like,
Yeah, and it's draining, but I just I don't even I don't it's, okay, the physical way that I react to crashes, it doesn't bother me anywhere near as close to the way the emotional
mm-hmm,
aspect hits me. Like when that happens to me, obviously I'm having a physical reaction to the daydream. I jumped out of my chair.
mm-hmm,
I felt like I had something that needed to be completed, but I actually had nothing. And the jumping out and the feeling that way isn't what gets to me. It's the, oh, I wasn't doing anything. I have no plans. I have nothing. I'm just here alone in my chair with no plans. That's the part that bothers me.
because you've made that like emotional connection, and now it's been severed, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have a string, and you give the string to your characters, or your scenario or whatever. Because for me, like being like a massive boisterous city for one reason or another one that really gets to me is I have like this sort of 1920s city, like futuristic sort of steampunk sort of deal where if you were to look down, you look into an abyss because the skyscrapers are so high, right? You could go all the way down there, right? You'd reach the slums and the dredges, but like you can't quite see it because the city's so big and tall and wide. And they're like always permanent party, 24/7 party, right? The sun never sets in New York. And you give this, like, let's say you got a red string. You give this red string to your characters or your city or whichever, like, to your scenario, and like getting out of it forcefully is like cutting that string while they still have the other end, right? And your emotional energy is still with them, so you've lost it in connecting with them. So, and then when you get out of it, that emotional connection exhausts you. It exhausts me, I can guarantee you of that.
Uh, how how often do these happen to you guys? Like, is a crash super common, or is it like a once in a while thing?
Yeah, I have a rough idea. I have a rough idea for me because, like, number wise, not entirely sure. Um, these days it could happen fairly often, and I just don't notice it because I find myself doing something so immediately afterwards. I can tell you right now that the really bad ones, when I just wake up and I'm just like I wake up and I'm like hungry, or I'm just really just upset in general. Like I'll get out of a daydream and be generally annoyed because I'll be really into it. I think the last time I had like a really really bad one it's been a while. It's been a couple months. But like the smaller ones where I just wake up really sort of like irritated in one way or another. That's not exactly super draining. But just rubs me the wrong way. There you go. That's a good way to put it. Like daydream crashes that end up getting me rubbed the wrong way happen fairly frequently. I'd say once or twice a week when I'm getting really into it. I get sucked into whatever I'm doing, and then when I get out of it, I just I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed because I'm no longer there. Now, number what? Some weeks I don't get it at all. Some weeks it's just every single day. Let me tell you, during finals week, I just could not.
Yeah, I would say too that I get like mini crashes. I
Hmm.
those are super common, and they vary in like severity. But most of them would be, but they're all not most of them. All of them are like really low on like our little 1 to 10 scale because they're just mini ones. They're fleeting. They go away when I can
Hmm.
readjust. Give myself a moment,
Hmm.
and they're not too profound. But I do get big ones.
I get a, I have a,
It's shake me to my foundation. You know,
I get a real when I get a real intense, a real acute sense of irritation. Like if someone were to like, sometimes I will get out of my daydream and I'll lay in my bed for a second, and I will slowly get up. I will stand up and I say to myself, if somebody walks through my door right now, I'm going to send a Hail Mary across my room. I don't know, I don't care what's the first thing I pick up, but it is going to be sent at 90 miles an hour using my best throwing arm, which is not very good, but I would still be very angry. Toss it straight at them, and it persists, because most of them you could readjust after like 10 minutes or whatever, but it follows me throughout the day, like hours of just being really mad. As and of course it just like decreases over time, but there's just this acute sense of I really, really didn't want that. I was at a perfect moment, and now I have to, I don't know, do it all over again. I got to do something else. I got to go wash my dishes, and then I go to wash my dishes, right? You know, really annoying.
are all
But
of yours marked by anger or irritation?
these days it's more common than being absolutely drained. Being drained is fairly uncommon for me these days, but the reason I just there's a lot of things around that I have cause to be irritated about, whether it be school or work or home, and it's like
Yeah.
ultimately none of them are really anything bad, and yeah, at the end of the day, there's no reason to be upset about any of them. But once when I get ripped out of a daydream, it gets me really, like, they really, really get me, for no particular reason, by the way. Nothing has changed. They are exactly the same. Nothing has become any worse. I've just being taken out of the daydream, like gets me in, and ruffles my feathers pretty
Yeah, I was gonna
bad
say
about it.
I have a lot of anger associated with MD, but it's usually from something like that, from getting ripped out of it, not from a crash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting ripped out of it. A daydream crash, like daydream crashes, are pretty similar, but like when it comes to being angry, because I would put it this way: these days, I'm ripped out of crashes by time constraints. So like I might have an alarm set or something like that. So if I don't like, how do I put this? There's a distinction there, where I get mad because I run out of time. But if I go too long and crash, I'm mad because I didn't have the time to spend anyways, right? If
Mm.
that makes sense. There's like a very thin distinction there, which it's all very everything's very time sensitive. Um, because I feel like an awful guy for spending so much time daydreaming, right? And then not only am I mad, I'm beating myself up about it. I'm kicking myself while I'm down, which is not a good idea. Please don't do that. From personal experience, I know that is not a good idea. Um, I tell myself that, but like I do it again every single time I crash, anyways, because I'm like, I don't have this time to be wasting or whatever. So I guess more the crashes go hand in hand with being ripped out of my daydream, and it is just a general sense of, it's not self-loathing exactly, but it is, beating yourself up about it. That's what happens, fairly common for me.
Yeah, mine are, I would say, marked by depression. Really, I guess that's the word for it. But Kayla, how often are yours? We sort of went off on a tangent there.
Yeah, it's
Um,
for those of you in the audience, you might have noticed about halfway through that I had an epiphany somewhere around there, and I totally forgot what we were talking about.
Yeah. So how common are they for you? And to that tangent we went off of, like if you had to pick one emotion to describe what a crash generally feels like, what would you pick?
Okay, well, to answer your first question, more commonly, like how often do they happen? I'd say the worst ones can happen like 5 times in a month, roughly. And by the worst ones, I mean for me, they're like those almost dissociative daydreaming moments where you're not really daydreaming, but it feels like you're daydreaming without the daydream. Those are the worst for me, and they happen quite often. They actually happened all of the month of April because that was when I was really stressed about final projects and essays and assignments and reports and stuff like that. And I guess the emotion that I would tie to it is, well, there's a couple. It would be kind of like stress and kind of like hollow stress, like that constant, like when you're ripped out of it, you're kind of stressed about what was I doing before this? What am I supposed to be doing right now that I wasn't doing because of the daydream that just happened? And it kind of sends me into this spiral of I need to get things done, but I can't because of this. I don't want to call it a dissociative state, but it feels like that.
Mm-hmm. It's the feeling of, okay, so like feeling the, not the desire to, but like the stress of needing to do something, like you feel like you need to do something. It's pretty common for me, because I tend to, because I'm in school, I have to get out of school and all this other nonsense, and I got to get my stuff done. But the stress associated with it always seems to make it worse, because you just have so much to do. It seems to make it more common, at least, like the time between crashes and the time between getting like ripped out of them for one reason or another tends to go down.
Mhm.
Right, crashes specifically, because sometimes you just need to, like, your brain needs to rest from whatever uh, school activity you're doing, and so you daydream. But like you daydream so much, it's like almost like it's like you binge it essentially, and when you binge it too much, you crash. In a lot of cases. So right, does that make sense? Like you go a long time without daydreaming, then you spend a lot of time, like a ton of time daydreaming, and in doing so, you hit a moment where you just kind of go overboard, and then the crash happens, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like the stress of the real world responsibilities and the daydream, like the really, really long daydreaming that comes right after that kind of
Mm-hmm.
drains you of everything. Like it takes more than you have to give almost.
Mm-hmm. And you've already given enough through schoolwork.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, Emery had asked, are they, and by they mean crashes, helpful for recovering from MD?
Mm,
Yeah, it's not a question I was expecting somebody to ask. Uh, but I feel like I have a lot to say about it. Do you guys have you guys found them to be helpful in any way to recovery?
That's a really good question.
ooh, I'll let you guys go first, because I'm gonna have to think on that.
Do you have any initial thoughts, Kayla? Because I'm going to go on a tirade for a minute.
Oh boy, here we
You do your thing. I need to think.
Okay, okay.
Okay, all right, Dimmer. We're going on the Dimmer soapbox. Here we go. Everybody
Yeah, my
sit down around the
soapbox.
campfire. It's time to listen.
No, no, I do not find them helpful. In fact, I think they are actively detrimental to recovery because they're so horrible. At least people like me, who experience them primarily as that emotional response, because it's terrifying. It's so depressing. It's so terrifying. Um, and the best solution to it, or not the best solution, but the solution that you're going to go to 99% of the time, is back into your daydream. And you don't ever want to feel the way that you felt during that crash again. So you are going to avoid feeling it by avoiding it, by daydreaming more, by skirting over it as much as you can. When you start to feel that crash coming, you're going to tune it back out. Like I I don't see how it is possible for a crash to help you recover, except in that it might get so horrifically awful that you're like, I can't live like this, and I'm checking myself into inpatient or something. Like I feel like I feel like that's the only way a crash could help you is by ruining you so hard that there's nothing else you can do but get help.
You savvy viewers might have noticed that does not seem very healthy. Getting so like relying on daydream crashes to get you to that point, because that's like sinking so low, like you found yourself at the bottom of the barrel. You've then gone and taken a shovel and started digging even further, right? Um,
That's how my experience with crashes is anyway. I understand that people might be able to find their motivation in them some other way, especially if they're more on the physical side of things.
the way that I ended up like coming on the up and up from maladaptive daydreaming going towards immersive daydreaming, um, was instead of relying on crashes, which I did fairly frequently at the time, is I attempted to live in the real world like a little bit more every day. How long did that take? A long time, but in living in like the real world and not exactly like dowsing in your daydreams for so long, I I'll put it this way. If your goal is to be more active in the real world, daydreaming crashes make that very difficult, because in certain cases where you're absolutely drained, you can't exactly go out and do things in the real world, and you can't exactly, go outside, see the sunlight, smell the roses, touch the grass. Like, it makes it more difficult to do that because you say, "Man, I am just so tired. I think I'm gonna fall asleep, right? I think I'm gonna, go back to bed or lay down, or right, because you're already out of energy anyways, right? The daydream, like the crash, has taken all of your energy, or it makes seeing the world like difficult, like existing in it really hard. Um, and then you just don't, because the way the way I did it, when like living in the real world a little bit more, required me to not be permanently exhausted on daydreaming crashes, which I was at the time anyways. So I had to actively not, or else it'd be like having like, let's say you have 100 energy in your like to spend per day, right? And let's say daydreaming takes like 30 of it, and then a daydream crash would take another 40, right? And then you have 30 left to go throughout your day. You have barely any comparatively. If you didn't daydream crash, you'd have 70. You could, 7, you would have 70% to give through your day. People will tell you you have to give 100% all the time always. Well, I only have 100% in me, my friend, like per day. So I would rather take the 70% of my energy and then go throughout my day as best I can, rather than 30% be miserable and then have a harder time doing anything at all, because that's what it was. Is I would go to take out the trash or whatever, and I'd be lifting lead weights whenever I walked around because I didn't have enough energy to do anything. If I didn't have my daydream crash, or when I didn't have my daydream crashes, I would just go and like take the trash out.
Did you just spoon theory, MD?
I have no idea what spoon theory is.
No. Oh, spoon theories. It's.
I have no idea.
Oh, we're gonna go off on another tangent here.
Kayla, save us, please. Please say something. We can't be going on a tangent now.
All right, well, we can go on the tangent after. But I think I agree with Dimmer here. They're not helpful for recovering from MV, but I feel like they are, to me at least. They're helpful with staying on track in the real world. Where like I crash and then there's that stress where I realize I was supposed to be doing something. And then I go through all the stuff that I haven't done yet, and it kind of helps me reorganize. And in some cases, it helps me realize I haven't started on this project that's due tomorrow. Maybe I should do that. It Daydream crashes can help in certain circumstances, but not for recovering. Because recovering takes special circumstances. It's like you don't want to go. I don't know how to explain it.
It requires a little bit more how do I put this? Recovering requires more. Like if you're using Daydream Crashes to recover, you'll need more than just that. And Daydreaming Crashes don't do terribly much as is. It might help. It might help in the short term. It might help in the short term, but long term, it does. For some people, it might help in the short term, but in the long term, it will not do much for you. Does that does that help, Kayla? Is that what you're trying to say here?
Yeah, yeah. Like recovery takes time,
Time.
it takes energy, and crashes take your time and energy, and you can't have two different things taking huge amounts of your time and energy every single day and expect yourself to be able to continue going to work at 100% every single day. It's,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, it's not realistic.
Mm-hmm. And the biggest part, like you said, is time. Time. Recovery takes time, whether you like it or not. Because I don't make the rules. Please don't shoot the messenger. I don't make the rules. Recovery takes a while, and let's say you do recover a little bit in the short term through daydream crashes because you've gotten yourself out of your daydream for a little bit longer. But like it's like if you started at like 0%, right? And your daydream crash gets you like maybe 2% like forward, like in recovery, let's say. And then like having another daydream crash like ultimately sends you backwards. It's like a one step forward, two steps back. There you go. That's one way to put it. It's like relying on daydreaming crashes ultimately is a net negative to recovery, right?
Yeah.
I had a thought.
We all have thoughts, Timur. All of us have thoughts when we are sharing the brain cell.
Be proud.
Mm-mm.
I think it's a really obvious thought, but I think maybe we did ourselves a disservice in this episode by starting out kind of slow and steady there, when really maybe we should have come out the gate swinging, because I think crashes are a lot more important in a bad way to the MD
Mhm.
experience than we've really let on
Mhm.
so far. Because I think, honestly, I think the more recognizable term for them would be withdrawal.
Mhm.
Like, I think in a lot of ways they're withdrawal. Um,
Mhm.
and that is something that will keep you addicted. It's hard to get through, you know?
And withdrawal is crippling.
It's
Withdrawal is crippling.
it's crippling, it is frightening, it is, um, just like any addict, and I know it's not 100% that MD is a behavioral addiction, so maybe we shouldn't call this withdrawal, but we're calling it crash anyway, so,
It,
Well,
it's it's
it's
the
an
it's a
accurate.
similar concept, right? They're
Yeah.
not,
I
those
think it
because
is.
they're not one to one, obviously, but right, like the results are often very similar enough to where you could call them daydream crashes. I mean, evidently, plenty of people do, right? And
Yeah.
it's a similar feeling. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody who knows somebody who has gone through addiction, who has seen them in withdrawal, I think will understand why this might be. Um, I honestly, I think the biggest thing holding maladaptive daydreamers back from getting better. I think this is it, and I think the second biggest thing would just be not wanting to let go. We love
Well,
our worlds, we love our
well,
characters.
yeah, we mentioned it
You know,
earlier. You get such an extreme emotional connection, right?
yeah, not wanting to let that go. Like as separate from all this other stuff. Like I want
Mm,
to keep my daydreams just because they're cool and I love them.
mm,
But that's not the thing. I mean, that is a thing holding me back, but that's not the thing that really hurts me. That would be like the horrible things I'm going to have to go through before it actually gets better. The withdrawal or the crash, which is
Oh my, yeah.
going to
Yep,
be
yep, yep.
longer and more frequent, you know?
Yeah, the problem with, well, there's a lot of problem with crashes that we have previously highlighted. But the biggest problem with them is if you, like, I'll say it again, you take the one, because the question that stemmed this from is, it's like, are they helpful for recovering from MD? The quick answer is no, and the longer answer is no, because no matter, like, you could be 90% of the way to recovering, and you then have a sprint of really bad daydream crashes, one after another after another after another. Right, that 90 turns to like an 88, turns to like an 86, turns to like an 82, to an 80, and that's 10%. Like, if you had gone positive in that 10% direction, you would have been totally fine. But now you're back where you were maybe 6 months ago or 8 months ago, right? That kind of like crippling withdrawal. I don't want to call it withdrawal. I mean,
Yeah.
it's similar enough, but like that sort of that like having them so often, and sometimes life happens and life hits hard. Like, life doesn't pull punches, so like sometimes you'll get to that point, and then then you'll have those crashes like pretty frequently for a short amount of time. So like it is actually quite the opposite in that regard, because that's what happens when you have like this over and over and over and over again. Now, obviously that doesn't happen all of the time, right? It might happen like fairly frequently depending on the person, but like as a hypothetical scenario, it's really, really not doing you anything. It's not doing you anything. It's not doing you any services.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of ways in which it could be helpful. Um, and that I've thought of one. Just one.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. Here's my theory. You might not know how bad of a maladaptive daydreamer you are, or even that you are maladaptive until you experience a crash. I think maybe you have to feel what it does to you before you can even realize that you are in too deep.
Hmm.
So it maybe as a wake up call.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. I don't know. That's all I came up with, though.
Well, it's like, okay, it's like you found the one merit it has, that daydream crashes are not great. They are bad.
They're
And
bad.
we all get them. We all get daydream crashes in one way or another, and they are not stellar in any capacity. So,
No, but I think okay, my crashes were a lot worse when I was younger, and they're a lot better now. And when I was younger, I didn't know what maladaptive daydreaming was. If I knew what it was now, like if the first time I experienced one or a bad one was when I already knew what MD was, I might have been able to recognize it for what it was. But
mhm.
maladaptive daydreaming didn't exist the first time I was having these crashes. I couldn't even look it up. It didn't even exist on the internet yet. So like even if I had Googled what was happening to me, I wouldn't have found anything. Um, and that's scary when you're having them and you don't know what they are and you can't figure out what they are. Like that it's um
It's very isolating for
yeah,
sure.
what are you gonna do with that? What are you gonna do? All you know is that the world is crushing you and you feel awful and you don't want to feel like that. That's all you know.
Mhm.
And even the framework, even viewing maladaptive daydreaming as an addiction or a behavioral addiction, um, even that is kind of a new concept.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of maladaptive daydreamers, when they were first experiencing these crashes, had absolutely no way by which to really.
I had no idea what was going on. I was
Yeah.
just like, this is awful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't remember my first one. Honestly, I no idea. Do you guys?
You, Kayla? Because I can tell you, I know when I was doing it early, but I first one, not so sure. Because I
Yeah,
think it
no
started out
Like
idea.
I
really innocuous.
like I could tell you when I started daydreaming. I could not tell you my first crash.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow,
it's,
that's weird.
well, you know
Like-
what's really funny is like everybody daydreams, right? So it's like everybody daydreams. So it's like really innocuous when you start, right? It's like how most people like let's say you like take medication as prescribed, but then like maladaptive daydreamers like just take a little bit more than like barely any more than like most people do, and then eventually that barely any more just kind of like adds up over time, and then you have your first crash, right? It seemed like when you start it's very innocuous, right? Sorry, innocuous is a fancy word. It's very like unrecognizable when you start, and it's like it doesn't seem like anything bad that you're daydreaming a little bit more per day, and they don't know, and then the crash happens. So there you go. Then you realize that you've been daydreaming quite a bit. Um, but I mean, it,
I honestly feel like they are the greatest obstacle to get over if you want to recover from maladaptive daydreaming. And I feel like they are powerful enough that they stop people from even attempting recovery. After you feel that first one, you're like, you know what? Daydream is actually not so bad. We're not doing that again.
mhm. And it's like it, and we all get them, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we all get them, because it's like if you try to stop, well, it pulls you right back in. So we all know what it's like. So I mean, it's bad. There you go. I'll put it that way. There's your long answer to that question. The short answer, it's bad, and the long answer is it's bad plus everything else we also just stated. You know. And if it happens to you, well, I mean, it happens to us all. That's something to mention for sure. So it's like it's bad, but you're not the only one.
Yeah, for something so super common among maladaptive daydreamers too, you would think that there'd be like I don't know. I just feel like like there's a big chunk of resources missing. Like, doesn't it feel
Mm.
like we should have web pages dedicated to getting through crashes, like just
Well,
crashes?
well, it's like it. How do I put this? It's like the underside of the rock, right? It's like you pick up a rock, like a stone on the road, and you look at the underside, and that's like all the nasty stuff. Because everybody, I talk to like friends and family about it now that they're older and a little more open to it, and they're like, that doesn't seem all that bad. It's like maybe I'm a maladaptive. I had someone tell me the other day, it's like maybe I'm a maladaptive daydreamer, like some guy at work, and I'm thinking to myself, I guess the real like the quick question is, have you had a daydreaming crash, right? And if the answer is no, then I'd say you're either not in too deep yet, or you might not have it. But it depends. It varies per person. I just know that daydreaming crashes. Like if you have a daydreaming crash, that's how you know. That's how I would put it, anyways. I'm no scientist, right? But
How would you guys? I think we've established how awful they are, but how do you personally mitigate them?
oh, that's a good question.
Mm, a hard one, right?
Well, it's difficult to mitigate them, right? Because sometimes you just have to. At least for me, I just had to like power through it. So I just had to literally one foot in front of the other until it was gone. I mean, sometimes you like wake up, like you said, Kayla, right? It's the morning, and
Mhm.
then you have it, and you have the whole rest of the day, but you can't quite leave because like you have a test or something going on. It's like you just like so I gotta pick up my feet. I gotta get up out of bed, and I'm exhausted, and I just go, 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 trudge through the muck. I've done that sometimes. Now that's not exactly mitigation. For those of you who are savvy out there, you might have noticed that I'm not mitigating anything.
I mean, sometimes that's all you can do is, just this too shall pass.
Hmm.
What about you, Kayla, though? Do you have any did you ever work out any way to personally get through them?
No, I haven't. I on top of my daydreams, I also get migraines. So I feel like the crashes almost make those worse. So when they happen, I just pop and leave and go through the day and hope it passes, you know?
Mhm.
Like maybe I would say maybe music helps a bit. I've played piano for almost 15 years now, and I guess sort of like calm, slow music helps it go by faster, but doesn't necessarily stop it altogether.
It's like you can't like oh I'm going like through like I'm digging deep in my brain here because I'm thinking super hard like how I could because I would always have like an answer to like most of these like questions whenever we would bring one of them up on show. But I'm going to be honest with y'all, I am digging real deep and I am finding like because you can't take like any energy for it because it's like an emotional like you're emotionally drained, right? Like what do you like like you couldn't like maybe like like have a bite to eat. I don't know. That doesn't sound right either.
Well, it's almost like trying to stop a hangover. Like you can't just tell your body to get over the night prior.
It's like I don't know. Like drink some water. That's about the best you could do for that. But even then,
Yeah.
it's
Yellow
like
Gatorade. That's
yeah,
the trick, guys.
yellow Gatorade
Yellow
specifically.
Gatorade.
Other colors will not do. What color Gatorade? What color? Okay, Dimmer,
It's a thing. It's a real thing. All right.
What color Gatorade do I have for my Daydream Crashes, Dimmer? Please tell me the secret, because I don't have one. My God, now that I'm thinking about it, oh boy.
I'll
What
tell you
do you-
what, I was really hoping one of you was going to come in clutch on this
No,
mitigation question
I,
because I don't have anything either.
I like well it's like that's the thing, right, is it's like what like I haven't heard of this talked about. I haven't seen it talked about all that much. Like I mean that's like the question is how do you mitigate them, and like I guess the most common answer that I've heard is it's like I don't know. It's like I just kind of like hope it goes away. And it's like that's like is there something you could do? Like what
Yeah. I think, okay, so, hmm, I think the best thing you can do for a crash is to get yourself involved in something real. But those are not going to be quick fixes, and they're not going to be something you can do all the time. You know, it's not like a grounding technique or a mindfulness practice that you can do right away and immediately feel better. It's like you need something to bounce back on because like me and you Q were saying earlier, the older we have gotten, the more we have built a little bit of a life for ourselves. The more the edge is taken off of them. Like I don't have those real bad crashes anymore, or at least I haven't for quite a while. So I really think that maybe one of probably the best way to to mitigate how bad the crashes are is to be in recovery and build something socially maybe for yourself. Socially is what helps me the most with maladaptive daydreaming. So like if I feel like a horrible crash like that, you know, I've spent the past couple of years rebuilding my social networks. I have someone I can text and be like, "What's up, B? You want to go to the park?" You know, something like that. I don't know.
Okay, we have a seed, we have an answer. All right. How do you get in that active recovery, right? That's the new question. Okay. Um and the answer that I can think of is when you're not having the crash, right? Because once you've had the crash, if you like are in the middle of a crash, at this point I am convinced until like somebody gives me like an answer otherwise that you are just in the crash, right? But it's the prep work that prevents the crash from being super bad, right? So when you're not having the crash, have a bit of something built up, and if you're like not super good socially, you could work at that a little bit over time, but in terms of because there's no really quick fix because you have to have the boat built before you get stranded on the island. So once you're stranded on the island, you can take the boat that you've previously built and then sail off of that. And if you don't have a boat, right, you're just stuck there until help arrives. Right, you can do the SOS as long as you like, but unless help arrives, you're stuck there. And then, you know, inevitably the daydreaming crash goes away, so help does arrive, but it's just going to hurt being stuck on that desert island. So it's like, okay, you got to build the boat beforehand, right? That's what I would say. And like, what do you do to build that boat, right? Like maybe like get like a friend or two, even if it's maybe like an online friend you could message, right, or someone that you can like talk to about it, like in terms of like going out, like in like if you can go out, because I know some places in the world are still a little locked down, I think, or a little touch and go on that. If you are able to go out, right, make sure you like sort of try to get someone you could like walk with is the only thing. Because like what, like you would need like social connections are what helped me. It's like what else could you do? Maybe have a hobby that Kayla, you said that like playing piano is something that you've done for a long time. Maybe like having a hobby that you can just sort of do like mindlessly, maybe that could help you get out of the crash, even if you don't have a lot of energy. Let's say you're good at drawing and you've done it long enough to just be able to doodle without much energy, right? You don't have to expend a lot of mental energy to doodle like something quick and easy, right? Maybe like having a pencil and paper around, not to like draw the greatest thing you've ever seen, right? You're not here to draw the Mona Lisa or like paint the Mona Lisa, but like just getting out of the crash and being like, oh my God, the world is not what I'm no longer in my daydream, but I can always rely on like the fact that I can like draw, right? Or like maybe like like a physical activity. Walking's good. You mentioned going to the park, Dimmer. Maybe that's about the best answer that I can come up with on the spot. Because before you mentioned anything, Dimmer, I'm at a loss because this seems to be there's like you said there seems to be a hole here on how to deal with daydreaming crashes. It seems to be fairly empty, and not a lot of people talk about it. In terms of mitigating it, I think those might be solutions that you could explore.
Yeah. Any thoughts come up during that, Kayla?
Well, I was just thinking, like you said, like getting a hobby. I know I have a piano in my basement. So if one's ever really, really bad and it's, as I said earlier, it's like early morning and you have stuff to do, then what I would do is go down to my basement and just play around with the keys, not necessarily playing a song or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
just creating a melody that
Mm-hmm.
I like and kind of almost letting myself forget about the crash,
Mm-hmm.
which I feel like it's helped a couple times
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm thinking of it. Um, but not very often because it's still it's almost like a social battery. Like you can't just make yourself forget that your social battery has been drained.
One thing I would like to mention though is that you did say that just like playing with the keys, right? If you have a hobby, the goal when coming out of a daydreaming crash, like I'm not entirely sure if this would work, but for those of you who can draw and can play music, I think let us know in the comments down below, or let us know like in the Maladaptive Daydreaming Discord how that goes, because we're trying to figure this out just as you are, right? We're trying to do the best we can, just as like everybody is. But if when doing your hobby, let's say you have like crochet or drawing or whatever, the I guess the point is to not try to like have a goal in mind, but to just do it.
Yeah, kind of just like messing around with
Mm.
your creative outlet.
Keep yourself preoccupied that you are in the real world. Remind yourself that you're in the real world. Remind yourself that you're here with everybody. You're here with your hobby.
I use rebuilding my social networks is like the main staple of my recovery. So
Hmm.
forgive me if I'm leaning a bit too much on that. But there is a weird part to it where like okay, let's say I do have a bad crash. And all I can do, like if I'm gonna text a friend to go hang out or something to get myself through it, that's to distract myself from it, to reattach myself to a real friendship or something, to feel something real. But it's not like I can tell them about it. Like I'm not out to all my friends about MD, and even like the one or two that I am, like I wouldn't just dump something like that on them. Like if you're feeling that, like how do you even tell a real person, like, oh, I'm so sad because my imaginary friends are so much better than you and they're not really here and I'm super depressed now. Like you can't say that to somebody.
I'd message my friend and say, "Hey, I'm emotionally drained. You willing to hang out with me? I just need someone around." That's how I would put it.
Yeah, yeah, and you can skate over it like that. Like that's perfectly fine. My friends would understand and accept that and stuff. But there's always going to be that distance between you where you can't share everything with them. Um, Or maybe you can. If you have a friend that you can share stuff like this with, like, do. That's what friends are for. But if you don't, what I'm trying to get at is, if you don't, I think this is where our communities come into play. Like, even if you don't want to be part of the maladaptive daydreaming community, because it's not good for everyone. They've been great for me, but they're not good places for everybody. But even if you don't want to be part of them, like, you can, just swing by when you're having a moment like this and, like, vent and dump and then take off. Like, that's fine. You can create a throwaway account on Reddit, post a rant, and then leave. That's fine. But there's just nobody else you can tell who's going to understand except other people who go through it.
Because we know we've been through it all before. We've done the
We've
song
all
and
been
dance.
through it. Or journal if you really want to keep it all to yourself, which is understandable. I just feel like writing down your feelings helps a lot. You can write through your feelings.
I know I have a friend who's fairly secretive, and they keep a lot of things to themselves. And they have this little, he calls it the little red book, and he wrote a bunch of stuff in there. And we're like, "You want to talk about it?" And he said no, which surprised us the first time, because most people say, "Yeah, I want to talk about it," but he said, "I absolutely do not. I have my little red book." And we're like, what is the little red book? And he pulled out a little notebook, and it had a little, like, rubber band around it. Like, this thing was not like, it was just like a tiny booklet that he had put, like, a really thick, like, broccoli rubber band around, if you know what those are. And he just said, "This is my little red book. I write things in it when I get really upset or annoyed or whatever." And then the first thing that one of our friends did was show it to me. He whacked him on the head, and that was the start of the little red book.
That's great. Yeah, everybody should have a little red book.
Everybody has secrets. Don't feel bad about keeping them.
God, I want to get me a little red book. I used to have a little pink book. I mean, it was, oh my God, I was such a edgelord teenager, though. It was, like, called Squeeze Book of Doom or something.
Yeah,
I hope I find that someday. That thing was so cute. But yeah, I used to write a lot. I used to journal throughout the day.
there you go. There's the story of the little red book. I would recommend it. My friend liked it a lot. It's just one potential solution, right? Because everyone's different. Some people deal with daydreaming crashes differently. Some hurt different than others. So it's a journey, finding what works for you. So I think, is that all we had, Dimmer? We've been going for about an hour and a half.
I think honestly we touched everything that I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I just feel bad.
Yeah.
We really had to dig deep to find anything that even halfway sounded like a solution.
Well, it's and might be just good to keep this in the podcast. I'll leave it up to you, Dimmer, like in the final cut. But one of the things that's like good to mention, sort of at the end of this, because we're hitting the end of the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. You can see that bar right there. We're hitting towards the end, but I think something that's worth mentioning at the very end here is that throughout all of this, if anything, this kind of shows towards the latter half of this episode that daydreaming crashes they're hard. They're hard to deal with. They're not really talked about. Solutions are few and far between, right? And throughout everything maladaptive daydreaming related, like, that's probably one of the hardest to deal with are the crashes.
Thanks for listening to Parallel Lives. You can join the Discord. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Pocket Cast, Google, YouTube, of course. Oh wow, I feel like I missed one. What's the big one? Spotify, of course. Find us on Spotify. Leave comments and stuff, especially if you have tips for getting through crashes. We had to dig deep, and we didn't come up with a lot of solutions. But if you've found something that works for you, leave it in the comments for other people.
You know what you could also do, for those of you on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. For anyone else, and on, like, say, Spotify or whatever, put us on your playlist, feed whatever, like, insane algorithm you're a part of. Just get us out there, do what you can, share us around. We'll be doing another one in 2 weeks, Dimmer?
Yeah, 1st and 16th of every month.
I would like to thank Kayla for coming along with us. Thank you, Kayla. Kayla. I hope you enjoyed your stay.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I hope so too. This was such a weird episode. Usually we have more to say that's helpful to the audience, and this one was just, we really put you on a hard one, Kayla. Sorry.
I think the biggest thing to take from this is if we talk about it more. It's like with anything, if you talk about it with people who go through it, then together you'll find solutions. So this is kind of the start of that conversation.